Every time you speak into a microphone, something incredible happens. Your voice, which is just vibrating air, gets converted into electricity almost instantly. That electrical signal can then travel across the world, be amplified through giant speakers, be stored digitally, or even streamed live to millions of people. But how does a tiny device sitting in front of your mouth capture something completely invisible like sound? And why do different microphones sound different? Why do studio microphones sound richer than phone microphones? And how can microphones hear whispers from meters away? By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what sound really is, how microphones convert sound into electrical signals, the different microphone technologies, why microphones sound different, and why microphones are one of the most important inventions in modern communication. Let's break it down. Human civilization changed forever when we discovered how to capture sound. Before microphones existed, your voice could only travel as far as your lungs could push it. Large crowds needed people to shout. Concerts were impossible. Radio broadcasting didn't exist. Phone calls didn't exist. Voice recording didn't exist. The invention of the microphone completely transformed communication, entertainment, journalism, music, filmmaking, and even science. Today, microphones are everywhere. In smartphones, in laptops, in security systems, in hearing aids, in smart assistants, in concerts, in airplanes, in hospitals. And yet most people have never actually thought about how they work. History of microphones. The history of microphones begins with one major problem. How do you convert sound into electricity? In the late 1800s, inventors were racing to improve communication systems. One of the biggest breakthroughs came during the development of the telephone. Early inventors like Alexander Graham Bell, Thomas Edison, and Emil Berliner worked on devices that could transform sound vibrations into electrical signals. One of the earliest successful microphone types was the carbon microphone. It worked by using tiny carbon granules. When sound waves hit a diaphragm, pressure on the carbon changed. That changed the electrical resistance, and suddenly sound could control electricity. This technology powered early telephones for decades. Over time, microphone technology evolved. Carbon microphones, dynamic microphones, condenser microphones, ribbon microphones, MEMS microphones in smartphones. Each new generation became more accurate, more sensitive, smaller, and better sounding. Today, microphones can detect extremely tiny vibrations, even smaller than the width of a human hair. What is sound? Before understanding microphones, you first need to understand what sound actually is. Sound is not an object. It's not matter. It's not particles flying through the air. Sound is a mechanical wave caused by vibrations that propagate through a medium, usually air, as pressure disturbances. When you speak, your vocal cords vibrate. Those vibrations push nearby air molecules. Those molecules push other molecules, creating pressure waves. These waves travel outward in all directions. Your ears detect these vibrations and your brain interprets them as sound. Microphones basically do the same thing. They detect air pressure vibrations, then convert those vibrations into electrical signals. That's the entire core idea: sound, vibration, and electricity. High-level overview of a microphone. At a high level, almost every microphone works in 4 stages. Stage 1. Sound waves enter the microphone. Air vibrations reach the microphone. Step 2. A diaphragm vibrates. A very thin membrane inside the microphone moves back and forth. This diaphragm is extremely sensitive. Step 3. Mechanical movement becomes electrical energy. Different microphone types use different methods, but the goal is always the same, which is to convert the movement into electrical signals. Step 4. The signal gets amplified and processed. The electrical signal is usually very weak, so it must be amplified before recording or playback. That's the big picture. The diaphragm. The diaphragm is the heart of the microphone. It's usually extremely thin, lightweight, and highly responsive. Its job is simple, which is to move when air pressure changes. When sound hits the diaphragm, it vibrates forward and backward, matching the exact pattern of the sound wave. Loud sounds create larger vibrations, soft sounds create smaller vibrations. High-pitched sounds vibrate faster, low-pitched sounds vibrate slower. This means the diaphragm is literally recreating the shape of the sound wave physically. The microphone now needs to translate this movement into electricity. And this is where microphone types become different. Dynamic microphones. One of the most common microphone types is the dynamic microphone. Dynamic microphones work using electromagnetism. Inside a dynamic microphone, the diaphragm is attached to a small wire coil, and that coil sits inside a magnetic field. So when sound hits the diaphragm moves, the coil moves with it, and moving wire inside a magnetic field generates electricity. This principle is called electromagnetic induction, the same basic principle used in generators and power plants. So the microphone is basically acting like a tiny electricity generator. The louder the sound, the more movement, the stronger the electrical signal. Why dynamic microphones are popular? Dynamic microphones are durable, reliable, inexpensive, and resistant to loud sounds. That's why they're heavily used for concerts, live performances, drums, guitar amps. They can survive drops, loud environments, and rough handling, but they're usually less sensitive than studio microphones. Condenser microphones. Condenser microphones work very differently. Instead of magnets and coils, they use capacitance. Inside a condenser microphone, the diaphragm acts as one electrical plate, and another fixed plate sits behind it. Together, they form something called a capacitor. When sound waves hit the diaphragm, the distance between the plates changes, which changes the capacitance, creating an electrical signal. Because these changes are extremely tiny, condenser microphones need external power, usually called phantom power. This powers internal electronics that amplify the signal. Why condenser microphones sound better? Condenser microphones are more sensitive, more detailed, and better at capturing subtle sounds. That's why they dominate music studios, podcasts, voiceovers, and filmmaking. They capture breath detail, room ambience, vocal texture. But they're also more fragile, and they can pick up unwanted background noise more easily. Ribbon microphones. Ribbon microphones are another fascinating design. Instead of a coil, they use an ultra-thin metal ribbon suspended inside a magnetic field. When sound waves hit the ribbon vibrates, generating electrical current. Ribbon microphones are famous for their warm sound, smooth high frequencies, and vintage audio character. They became legendary in radio broadcasting, jazz recordings, and classic music production. However, traditional ribbon microphones are fragile, and strong air blasts can damage the ribbon. Smartphone microphones. The microphones inside smartphones are incredibly small. Most modern phones use MEMS microphones. MEMS stands for micro-electromechanical systems. These microphones are microscopic engineering marvels. Inside them are tiny moving components built directly onto silicon chips. Even though they're tiny, they're efficient, cheap to mass produce, and surprisingly accurate. Modern smartphones often contain multiple microphones. Why? Because phones use them for calls, video recording, noise cancellation, voice assistance, and directional audio. Your phone constantly processes audio using software and AI, meaning modern microphones are no longer just hardware. They're deeply connected with digital signal processing. How microphones handle frequency. Not all sounds are the same. Some sounds are low frequency, bass, thunder, and deep voices. Others are high frequency, whistles, cymbals, and sharp consonants. Microphones respond differently to different frequencies. This is called frequency response. Some microphones boost bass, others emphasize vocal clarity. Studio engineers carefully choose microphones depending on the sound they want. This is why podcasts, music, vocals, drums, instruments all use different microphone types. Directionality and polar patterns. Microphones don't always listen equally in every direction. Some microphones are designed to mainly capture sound from the front. Others capture sound from all directions. This behavior is called polar pattern. The most common pattern is cardioid. It captures sound mostly from the front. It's great for podcasts, singing, and reducing background noise. Other patterns include omnidirectional, which captures sound from every direction. Bidirectional, which captures front and back. Used in interviews and studio recordings, polar patterns are extremely important because they determine clarity, room noise, and recording quality. Key insights and misconceptions. Loud microphones don't exist. Microphones themselves do not make sound louder. They only convert sound into electrical signals. Amplifiers increase the volume later. Phone microphones are heavily processed. Modern phones use AI and software processing. So, what you hear in recordings is often digitally enhanced. Expensive microphones don't magically improve bad audio. Room acoustics matter massively. A good room with a decent microphone often sounds better than a bad room with an expensive microphone. Some microphones can hear extremely tiny sounds. Scientific microphones can detect insects, distant vibrations, industrial faults, and even structural weaknesses. Real-world impact. Microphones changed the world. Without microphones, concerts would be impossible. Radio wouldn't exist, streaming wouldn't exist. Online classes wouldn't exist, podcasts wouldn't exist. Smartphones wouldn't function properly. Microphones enable communication, entertainment, journalism, filmmaking, medicine, surveillance, and voice AI systems. They become one of the most important technologies in modern society. And today, billions of microphones are operating around the world simultaneously. The future of microphones? The future of microphones is becoming increasingly intelligent. Modern systems can isolate voices in noisy environments. remove echoes, identify speakers, and enhance audio using AI. Future microphones may become smaller, smarter, more directional, and deeply integrated with artificial intelligence. We're moving toward microphones that don't just hear sound but actually understands it. So now you understand. Sound is vibration. Microphones detect those vibrations. Different technologies convert movement into electricity. That electrical signal becomes recorded audio, phone calls, music, and communication. From giant concert stages to tiny smartphone microphones. These devices are constantly transforming invisible air vibrations into information. And the craziest part, you probably use multiple microphones every single day without even noticing. If there's another everyday technology you want broken down like this, drop it in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.